Good evening, councillors. Welcome to this Audit and Governance Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
We have apologies from Councillor Benson and Councillor Silk is substituting. We also have apologies from Councillor Wimbledon.
Minutes of the meeting.
Sonia.
Minutes.
Sonia, please can we have the minutes of the meeting? That's great, thank you.
Anybody got any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Everybody agree the minutes? Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 4, yeah.
Chair, if I may, so members, we're expecting this evening external auditors to join the meeting virtually. They're not online as yet, so Chair, if I might ask that you invite the committee to move the agenda item 6 and to take that ahead of items 4 and 5.
Certainly. Councillors, we'll start with agenda item 6 this evening. It is. Hang on. What have you taken?
6.
I had it here. The monitoring report of governance arrangements is presented in the annual governance statement. Mr. Brooke, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Jay. Yes, I will, and good evening, councillors. So, item 6, this is the monitoring report of the governance arrangements as presented in the annual governance statement. So the annual governance statement came to the Audit and Governance Committee in July 2024, fairly long document, and we ran through that together at the time. The governance statement would have been reporting back for the 23-24 financial year, so looking at any sort of deficiencies that there might have been in our governance arrangements during that particular financial year. This report that's brought to you this evening is the first of 2 progress reports that come through to the Audit and Governance Committee, reporting on the progress against some of the issues that were raised in the annual governance statement. Obviously this report today, and then the second will be coming to committee again in spring, followed by the annual governance statement again for 24-25 financial year, which will come in July 2025. The governance arrangements that we have in place at the council include a number of officer leads who collectively form what we call the Good Governance Group, and that's the leads are at assistant director level. Plus, we also have the head of internal audit who's at the meeting this evening, and those leads have responsibility for the governance processes, which is set out in the annual governance statement and again in this particular monitoring report. And the report, just to say that it was developed with contributions from and in consultation with officers from that group. So it's not just my report written on my own, it's actually a report which is written with contributions from everyone who leads on each of these governance areas. So the report itself provides a general update against all of the key business processes, plus some updates on the action plan that we include in the annual governance statement. And just to flag that the recommendation is to note the assurance provided by the report about the operation of the Council's governance framework as presented in the annual governance statement. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to run you through the main report, but I'm not going to go through absolutely every one of the business processes that we have in our governance framework, but I'm just going to flag those that I think will be of interest to you, to your attention. But of course, at the end of the presentation, I'm happy to take any questions on anything that's included in the report. So if perhaps we first turn to the business process of consultation engagement, and that's in paragraphs 5.2 to 5.6 of the report. The annual government statement, we flagged that this was a partial assurance. An update to give you this evening is that tenant and leaseholder engagement has been identified as a key weakness by the regulator for social housing. Now, this related mainly to the timing of the survey, actually. I think we were basically late in doing a survey with our tenants, but that then triggered an interest from the social housing regulator, and we had an inspection this month, actually, and this was reported to Cabinet, actually, in full in November. The Council does now have in place a tenant satisfaction survey, which is going to be running until the end of March 2025. And as part of the the inspection, we're also developing an improvement plan, which is going to be for implementation over the next 18 to 24 months. There's also going to be a report on this improvement plan coming to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in June 2025. So I suppose it's really just to sort of flag the importance of a report like this, is that we look at our governance processes. Consultation engagement we did feel was partial, but actually something has emerged since the annual governance statement. That's obviously led to other things, which is why it's included in the update report this evening. So consultation engagement was the first area, really, just to sort of flag to you. The second is around health and safety. So this is presented in the report in paragraphs 5.29 to 5.33. Now in the annual governance statement, we came to the conclusion that the health and safety arrangements were satisfactory. We've since had an external review of our health and safety arrangements, which was undertaken, and we had a report issued to the Council in August 2024, which raised a number of areas that required improvement in our corporate arrangements. So you may recall when I presented the annual governance statement, I think I prefaced it with the fact that we've got lots of new people in post at the Council and we're turning over lots of rocks. And as we turn those rocks over, we're discovering issues that we can't ignore and therefore need to flag them and be absolutely transparent about those and get on top of those issues. So I think probably it's fair to say that here health and safety is something that we thought was maybe okay. I mean, satisfactory. We didn't really have anything to sort of suggest otherwise. However, this external assessment has suggested that there are some things that we need to do. In quick response to that, we had in October of this year, we had a health and safety month across the organisation to raise awareness. There were a number of high priority actions which were due for completion at the end of November, and I believe they're in place, mainly relating to the establishment of a health and safety board. And then we've got another sort of lower priority actions to implement by the end of February 2025. So that's health and safety, and again, just to sort of say that obviously something has changed, and therefore we're flagging that in the report to you this evening. A few more areas just to run through. So business continuity, 5.34 to 5.37 within the report. So in the annual governance statement, we assessed that as minimal assurance. It was our only area of minimal assurance. There was an audit issued in February 2024, which raised a number of areas that needed attention. That was related to things like business continuity plans, testing these plans, training, etc. We've had an emergency planning business continuity lead who's been in post since June 2024 and has been meeting with all the assistant directors in the past few months to discuss their responsibilities relating to business continuity and also the arrangements that they have in place in their areas. And then there's a programme of testing arrangements planned over the remainder of the year. So again, it's just giving you an update on where we've got to on that particular business process. I think in terms of data quality, so 5.46 to 5.48, we assess that as being satisfactory. Again, and this relates back to the intervention in the housing service from the social housing regulator. There have been some issues relating to data quality in our housing management system that have since been identified. These are being looked at and addressed as part of the housing improvement programme. But again, it's just another one of those rocks that we've turned over that we need to report to you this evening in terms of some areas for improvement. Moving on to information governance, 5.49 to 5.54. So we had an assessment of partial in the annual governance statement on this. We had a couple of actions relating to, first of all, the role of what's called the Senior Information Risk Officer, or SIRO. That was something that we didn't have clearly assigned at the council. That is now clearly assigned, so I've taken on that role. And then there was something in there relating to cyber security as well, and we've got some stuff in there around the action plan. We have, since the annual governance statement, had an independent scan of our systems, which showed quite good progress, actually making our systems more secure. So we scored actually quite well in that particular scan. So again, just an update for you in terms of the area of information governance. In terms of complaints, 5.64 to 5.69, this was assessed as satisfactory. Just an update on this particular area. So just to say that we have revised the corporate complaints policy. That was adopted in November 2024. And the main reason for that that revision to that policy was making sure that it's compliant with Ombudsman guidance. So the requirement to have a joint handling code across housing and local government and social care Ombudsman. And then finally, within the report, you have two appendices, which are the action plans. Both of these would have been included in the annual governance statement. The first relates to addressing the issues that were raised in that statement. And this progress against those actions is set out in Appendix 1. And the second action plan relates to the internal audit into senior manager paying conditions, which I think we're taking later on the agenda. Covered in it's covered in the other item on this agenda, and the progress against these actions is set out in Appendix 2. So it's quite a lengthy introduction, but again, I think it's important just through the report to just raise to your attention, some progress which has been made in some of those areas. But as I keep saying, some more rocks that we've overturned that we just need to flag to your attention as some issues that we need to address. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor? Councillor Bredding, ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben, for the report. Can I ask, with the progress you're making, how satisfied are you that the systems you're putting in place are going to bring about the change that you want?
That's a good question, thank you. So the actions that we included in the annual governance statement were the actions that we thought were appropriate based on the issues that were identified at the time. So I'm reasonably confident if we implement those actions, then we will have addressed some of those issues that were raised in the annual governance statement. I think with all of these things, it's not just a question of implementing the actions, but then we'll want to get some assurance that those actions have had the desired impact. So that might either be through a further up, maybe a follow-up audit from the internal audit team, or it will certainly be something that as a good governance group, when we're doing the annual governance statement for 24-25, we'll be looking at what actions have been implemented, and we'll be basically discussing amongst ourselves and looking for what evidence we've got to say that actually as those sort of business process leads, or as a group as a whole, and again, taking the views of Mr. Andrew Barnes, our head of internal audit, actually whether that's had any shift in our overall assessment of compliance with that particular business process. So, I'm reasonably confident that if we implement what we said we were going to implement, that's definitely going to be an improvement in the scores effectively that we give in the annual governance statement in 24-25. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up? Thank you. How often are the systems that you're putting in place monitored? How stringently are they being monitored in the various departments?
It's probably quite difficult to give a sort of one consistent answer. It will very much depend on what the business process is in place. So let's take an example, for example, the performance management side of things. So we will have systems in place which say that we will report on performance, let's say, on a quarterly basis. Some service areas might do that slightly more frequently than that. So that would be, we would look at those systems on a monthly or quarterly basis. There may be other stuff that we would look at either more regularly or less regularly in that. So I can't probably give a universal answer to that, but it would depend on the business process in place. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. There were a couple of points that you mentioned here, health and safety and data quality, where there's a theme running in so much as in both cases we did an assessment, we felt we were fine, and in neither case when they were subjected to external scrutiny did we pass. Is that because could you just give a bit of background on that? Because in each case it suggests that either we've got outdated standards that we're measuring ourselves against, or that we're not measuring ourselves objectively enough. And if either of those is true, what are we doing to fix it?
So I think there's probably a couple of areas there. I think first of all, a lot of it is down to the resource that we had in place at the time, I think, when we did these assessments. And I think that now that we have our full sort of suite of assistant directors in place in particular, they will be able to do the kind of like the turning over the rocks, looking into things in a bit more detail, as you would expect them to do, and therefore just simply by having more resource, they're able to discover, you know, and uncover things perhaps that we wouldn't have been able to with the resource that we had at the time that we did the annual governance statement. I think in the case of housing, I think there's a little bit of an element of sort of both sides of that. So it wasn't just a question of the regulator for social housing came in and identified a number of areas where we need to improve. It was a question of the consultation, I think, kicked that off. But then when we knew that the regulator for social housing was coming in, we were then saying, well, actually, we've got to be absolutely objective. We've got to turn over all the rocks that we can possibly turn over. And I think data quality is one of those that almost came after that initial conversation that we had. So they weren't looking specifically at the data quality, but we said, you know what, let's have a look at the data quality again. Are we confident that when the social housing regulator comes in, the data that we're going to give to them and talk with them, are we confident that that is as good as it needs to be? So it wasn't necessarily an external inspection raised a load of things. It was a combination of two, but it's caused us to look more closely, particularly at the housing service within the council.
Thank you. And obviously without the data, even where we're doing well, we can't prove we're doing well, which is a frustrating problem to have. Chairman, with your permission, can I ask another question? Thank you. Just when you're mentioning the business continuity, I didn't spot in there, and it's probably in a document elsewhere, but where we're doing backups of systems, have we actually practiced the restore?
So I'd like to go away and check on that one. I think I wouldn't like to give you an absolute, I mean, I would fully expect that we would, but let me just find out exactly what our processes are in terms of that particular thing. Yes, we are backing up all the time. In terms of how often we check on the restore and stuff, I don't want to give you an answer off the top of my head because I'd like to check for the details. But yeah, I can reply to committee by email, so you get an answer in writing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, just coming back to business continuity, 5.36, we say the next phase of work to meet with all assistant directors, understand areas of responsibility. This is expected to be concluded by mid-November. I wonder if this has been concluded, and do you have an update on that for us?
Yes, so the work has taken place. I've certainly met with our new emergency plan business continuity lead to talk about my particular areas. I believe that he has now met with all of the service, all the assistant directors across the organisation. Having done that, then there is work that will then fall out of that in terms of us updating our business continuity plan. So yeah, it says mid-November. It has happened and concluded. It's just the work that will now fall out of that, which will form the work that we need to do on this by the end of the financial year.
I know Alan talked about business continuity, but I know we're on partial when we talk about risk management. So, and we're not looking to have the register ready until 25, 26. So on the back of business continuity for me, and I'm sure Lance will agree with me on this, when you look at certain areas like, for example, reconciliations or whatever, if you're not backing up on a ultra regular base, then you're trying to go backwards. If, for example, if you should be backing up at least daily, because then if something goes wrong, you can go back to the previous day. So I wonder what your thoughts are on the risk to the organisation if there is business continuity issues.
So we it's a good question. So we definitely do the backups daily. I think it was just that response about actually what are we doing to test the reload of those backups to make sure that if we did need to, that the backups have been successful and we can restore systems from them. Yeah.
If through you, Chair, if I might also just add to that, the issue around business continuity is around primarily around the documentation of the practices, keeping them in a place that people can reach, and then testing and practicing them, which is a fundamental part of any business continuity. So it's not that we don't have business continuity in place, it's just we actually haven't written it down. And then we make sure we need to practice it. So that's the bit that I'm asking all assistant directors to really focus on. And the same is really in relation to our emergency planning responses too, because we have lots of plans in place, but it's about how you practice them and then what learning you derive from that.
Yes, can I just ask about the health and safety? What standards do you measure yourself to, or does the council measure to?
So we have a health and safety advisor in the council, and they will use national guidance, which typically would be issued by the health and safety executive. The audit that we had that took place, I think they used their own model of what they would expect to see in place in an organisation of our size based on their experience. So health and safety specialist, and that, again, I think they would be basing their stuff. It will be in the legislation ultimately.
Obviously, this is my baby, my health and safety. This is what I do. Is it a company that come in an external auditor, or is it? And what level are their capabilities and their competent person?
So it was an external company. I wasn't involved in appointing them, but they would have been a capable organisation and capable of doing what we needed them to do. So they would have had that level of competence that we required.
But if you've not got it right, how do you understand that they're actually capable? I just want to understand how they were measured to be put into that position.
You, Chair, if I may. Councillor, they are health and safety accredited. They have all the relevant qualifications. We took them through we brought them through a procurement process through recognised specialist experts, and they gave us an action plan of some things that we needed to focus on, and we've subsequently recruited an individual whose job it is to deliver against that action plan. So they are making sure that it happens. So we have gone straight to the experts, and we've got a specialist expertise to deliver.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one more question on performance management. I know that, Angela, there's some great work going on around this, but it says that there is expected underway and to be complete 5.41 by March 2025. Are we confident then that if the work around appraisals and how staff are going to be performance managed isn't going to be complete to then, that we have a process to performance manage them for 24 to 25 if this isn't in place?
Thank you, Chair, through you. So what we have in place are localised arrangements for managing performance at team level. What this will do is bring in a whole organisation approach to appraisals, which is linked to the new corporate plan, which will come in front of council in the new year. And from that corporate plan, which sets out the ambitions and the priorities of the council, will then be the cascade of how appraisals work to deliver against those objectives. So it's a reset of a series of localised arrangements and through into a kind of a whole organisation approach. In relation to performance, therefore, it's dealt with at a local level by managers who manage their teams in the usual way, and also in relation to the various policies and procedures that we already have in place for managing staff performance.
Any further questions? Members, is that noted? Yeah. And right, now we're going to go back to the beginning to item 4. The External Auditor's Draft Audit Completion Report for 21-22 and 22-23. Mr. Wasco, would you please introduce the report, update the quarterly treasury management activities?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So following completion of the 2020-21 Statement of Accounts that was presented to this committee in July, we are now in a position to be able to move forward with both 21-2 and 22-3 financial years. Those statements of accounts themselves will follow on as the next item, but because the first step we need to take is to receive the external auditor's completion report. Therefore, I'd now like to hand over to Debbie Hanson, who's our partner at EY, to take us through their currently draft report. Over to you, Debbie.
Okay, thank you, Lance. So this is noted as a draft report because we are still just going through the process of finalising the consultation on the wording for the audit opinion. And actually, I will just pause for a second to check that everyone can hear me okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Debbie,
Okay,
thank you.
fine. It's all right. I obviously had some problems because I dialed into the meeting early, but obviously couldn't get in for some reason. So yeah, this is a draft report because our opinion is still going through consultation. We're not expecting any significant changes to the opinion that's included in our draft report, largely because it's based on the same issues that we reported back to this committee in relation to 2021, but we do need to just go through that process. For information, we've included in the report some information about the local audit backstops, but just wanted to make clear that that's included for information only. The reason for the disclaimer on the council's opinions is in relation to the issues we identified in 2021, which basically meant we were unable to conclude on the completeness, accuracy and reliability of information in the financial statements and management representations. We've reported those issues in some detail to previous meetings of this committee, therefore I wasn't proposing to go over that ground again. The key point is really that those issues continue to impact on 21-22 and 22-23 because those statutory officers were still in post during that period. Therefore, we concluded that we didn't have the evidence to basically issue an audit report and are issuing a disclaimed audit report. We also identified significant weakness in governance arrangements in the council, again, the same as last year, and therefore have also reported those within our completion report again. Because we are issuing a disclaimed opinion, there are some basic procedures we need to undertake in relation to the financial statements aspects of things. So we have, for example, done some basic checks on your financial statements to make sure they're cast, to make sure the opening balances agree to the prior year balances. And we've also completed the disclosure checklist to ensure they include all the relevant elements. And there are no issues arising from that work. We've also asked for various representations and assurances from management in relation to internal controls, frauds, compliance with laws and regulations, etc. And all of those have been received, which will allow us to issue our disclaimed opinion. We've also undertaken a review of our annual governance statement, and our review of that has indicated that we're satisfied that that is an accurate representation of the controls in place at the council and also the weaknesses that you've identified and the actions being taken to address those. Probably wasn't going to say any more. As I say, all of the content really within the report has been to this committee before as part of the 2021 audit. This is really the final step in us being able to issue the disclaimed opinion for the subsequent 2 years. And as part of your recommendations, you've got recommendations to delegate receipt of any final report that we issue if there's any changes to that, and also final approval of the accounts and signing of the letters of representation, which will allow us to issue our opinions, which we are planning to do obviously before the backstop date of the 13th of December. Very happy to take any questions, but as I said, pretty much all the issues within this report have been before this committee before, and we've discussed them in some detail.
Members, do we have any questions? Councillor.
Thank you for that. While we appreciate the report is in draft, there's a couple of points in the report that I've spotted that there are some mixed tenses, etc. Would you be happy to accept an email with some comment on that so that they could be looked at?
Absolutely, yes. Very happy to receive anything that improves the quality of the reports.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. Members, is the draft completion report for the years 31st of March 22 and the 31st of March 23 as set out in Appendix A noted? Thank you, noted. Members, I will move a motion that if there are significant changes to the draft report, the Section 151 officer will bring these to the attention of the chair of the committee and report these to the next available committee meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor. Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you, members. That includes this item of business.
Thank you, Chair. If it's okay, I will leave the meeting because I have another one I have to dial into at 7:30.
Very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Wasco, will you please introduce the report on the Council's financial statements for 2021-22 and 2022-23?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So obviously, as we've just now had EY's report, we're now able to consider the accounts themselves for the 2 years in question. These accounts have been published for quite some time on our website, as you'd expect given the years they cover, but they were recently updated and republished. As part of that, in doing so, I was able to commence the public inspection period. It's a period of 30 working days required by law, and in that period it allows for the members of the public to ask questions of auditors in case they want to make any representations to the auditors themselves. But members of the public can also ask questions of myself and the finance team and seek to view any sort of backing information that makes up any of the numbers within the accounts. As is sadly typical, we did not receive any questions at all from any members of the public. As I mentioned, there were some updates. So the updates that were made to the accounts were the same updates that were made to the 2020-21 accounts that we brought in July. So committee members may remember the first one of those was in relation to the annual governance statement itself. It has to be updated because there's a requirement for it to be relatively current at the time the accounts are finalised. So the update was the addition of the addendum that had previously been put forward. And for the most part, that addendum is identical to the addendum that was a part of the accounts in July. However, members will obviously be aware that at Council in October, a further consideration to the senior manager paying conditions matter was given. And falling out of that, there was some further action agreed. So there's 2 paragraphs that have been updated and added to the addendum. The first of which just outlines the report itself and the options that were presented to councillors to consider, whilst the second one just confirms the agreed action that councillors took from that meeting. In terms of the other updates, there's 2 other minor updates which are the same ones. The first of those has been to the events after the balance sheet note, simply to signpost the reader to the addendum to the AGS. And whilst the second amendment is to the statement of responsibilities, again, same as we did in the prior year, just to make clear that at the time of preparation, the Section 151 officer was Chris Mills rather than myself, just to make sure that those responsibilities are clear. I wasn't proposing to go through statements themselves, but Chair, if there's any questions, I'll happily receive them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oscar. Councillors, are there any questions?
Can I just state that having read this, because they are so old, I think we just have to agree them as they stand, because we don't understand them. We understand the figures, but we don't know any of the context surrounding them. So I think as members, we just have to agree them as they stand.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Members, thank you. I move the recommendation set out at paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor.
I second that, Chair.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Members, that concludes the business for this meeting. The meeting is closing at 7:33. Thank you all for attending.